I'm back. Oh, hey, fish. How the hell did you get in here? Business, comma, none of yours. Yeah, a long time ago. A bit too long ago. Why do you ask? You want me to talk about the game? Well, I guess that makes sense. But why didn't you tell me from the outset? Oh. Yeah. That guy really sucks at making videos, doesn't he? I don't know. Boy, what a way to mark the genesis of Book 2 with a game in a series that I've never played before and frankly, never considered playing before. But, as I have said before, I am a Fire Emblem fan of my word. I promised somebody I would play it, so here we are. I guess, whatever good that'll do me. There's one tiny little thing that I need to bring up. I know nothing about the God of War series, aside from Kratos. I don't know any past events, nor do I know any other characters, barring any real-world counterpart. My friends did tell me that I should play the older games for the context and this and that, and I said, pfft. I spat all over my and I said, no, I'm not playing any old games. Who even likes gross old games? Not my wallet, that's for damn sure. Leave me and my eBay purchase history alone. And the game opens on a man just standing there with an axe. For a series known for its grand, over-the-top action combat, this intro being so subtle, so somber, came as a shock. The tree you chop down is then used to burn the remains of Kratos' deceased wife and his son Atreus' mother, which is impressive because within the first 3 minutes of the game, you're already given a full story and it never really slows down. One of the main aspects of this game, and arguably the thing that kept me in there for the duration and made me want to come back day after day, was... Well, sure, but the father-son relationship between Kratos and Atreus, as shown in the very first mission where Kratos teaches his son how to hunt, and by extension teaches the player how the game works. But then enemies begin appearing, which isn't supposed to happen because... meh. And back at the house, Kratos is attacked by... a millennial. This guy... I have quite a bit to say about him, and it's not necessarily positive. The main goal of the game is to release Atreus' mother's ashes from the highest peak in all the 9 realms, which turns out to be a task easier said than done. Every time you think the goal is within reach, it gets further away because something always blocks your way or pushes you back. It gets a little bit annoying. That snowy mountain in Midgard you see in the distance is said to be the highest peak, making it your goal, for now. On the way there you meet Brock, a dwarf in desperate need of a Hims-sponsored video, and no, not because of his hairline. I can't help him though. This video isn't sponsored. and I seriously doubt anything I make ever will be. Sir, there is a reason I quit Twitch, and it was not because of that artistic nudity fiasco. He and later on his brother Citri are the game's blacksmith/shop, where you can craft and upgrade equipment or buy the all-important revival stones, because there's one problem with the game. One major problem that really affected my time with it from start to end. Me. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not particularly dexterous when it comes to action games, so they've never really been my cup of tea, unless they have really good stories or are very basic. Or are Bayonetta. I love Bayonetta. But regardless of my enjoyment of them, I am really bad at them. Really bad at them. To the point where even at normal difficulty, I found this game was a bit harder at times than I'd care to admit. The difficulty really caught me off guard, especially at the start. None of those deaths were recorded for the bit, by the way. Okay, jokes aside, I really could barely stand a chance against the enemies at the start, and even then, when I got a slight grasp of the combat, I was still not great at any point. I'm not saying the game is unfair or that the difficulty is artificial like in a bullshit Souls game. In this case, it is entirely a me problem. Oh, Sarah, you're a bullshit Souls fan? I'm gonna be sick. It's true, you know, I don't have the highest difficulty tolerance in the world, maybe even in this room, even though I'm alone on a Tuesday night. Is it Tuesday? It's Monday. It's Monday. Even though I'm alone on a Monday night. But that's just how I am. Ridicule me all you want. At least I didn't give up. Fish, stop. When it comes to combat, I found the trick was to not be afraid to fight head on. Plan your approach, of course, keep an eye out for incoming attacks, but don't be afraid to just go for it. Don't be afraid of doing whatever it is you may need to do to take down enemies. Use skills, use your items, go for it. It also helps that a loss in this game is no more than a light slap on the wrist and you're back in it, ready to go again, unlike in... No, nothing. The game is also very generous about its checkpoints, even during fights, making dying when you're so close to beating a boss less painful, which I appreciate. Quite a bit. Again, ridicule me all you want. Fish, I told you to stop. Once you get to this turtle house in a flower garden with Mysterious Lady, hopefully you would have noticed that this game is beautiful. That much should be obvious. Every environment looks and feels alive and vibrant, and the cinematography makes everything feel grand and important. And the accuracy to... Hold on. Some of these names sound familiar. This game is just a blatant ripoff of Fire Emblem Heroes. They mention Nidavellir, there's Leosulfar and Dokkalfar, there's Muspel, there's Hell, there's even Gulveig. She's relatively new, how is she here? Nintendo's gotta sue over copyright or something, right? I don't know, is it? Real talk, you better get used to the heroes terms because, like Fish said, that's gonna be the running bit for this chapter. Oh, I'm never making a Fire Emblem video. I refuse. The way up the mountain is blocked off by Kingdom Hearts, and Lady from earlier tells us we need the light of the Leozelfur because, yes, so off we go to Tyr's Temple in the middle of the lake to Bifrost our way over there. Did I just use Bifrost as a verb? Despite not actually being able to go to all 9 realms, the ones you do go to are very well designed, with wonderful set pieces and represent the worlds with an incredible amount of detail. But most of all, each one is important to both the story and the characters, and also just worth exploring on their own. Traveling to these, even multiple times, never feels like a chore or a waste of time. None of them are just fluff. There's a war between the two Alpha and Leozelfur, where the Dokkalfar are trying to take control of the magic light we need. Which reminds me of how Luma Energy and Genera PR have taken total control over ours and made things unbelievably worse than ever before with no penalties or investigations on part of a dictator who only defends them. I wonder why he does that. Maldita sea Luma Energy y maldita sea Genera PR. Feels good to say that again. I have no idea. This war makes Atreus go through his first existential crisis, but it also shows one of the main character traits of Kratos. He doesn't do things for quote-unquote good reasons. He doesn't seek to help. He just does whatever is necessary to achieve the goal at hand. He doesn't help in defeating the Dokkalfar, because it's the right thing to do. He does it because they are in the way of the light he needs in order to reach the top of the mountain. Believe it or not, that one trait is the biggest point of character development and one of the most impactful bits of foreshadowing I've seen in a long time. Getting the light after dying to this bastard a million times, honestly, this is the worst enemy in the game. We climb back up the mountain like we planned on originally, but let's talk about the combat for a bit. Let me preface everything by reiterating that I am terrible at it. Now with that out of the way, I am terrible at it. At the start of the game, you have 3 main options for combat: dodge, block, and attack. Kratos can dodge by dancing in whatever direction, or roll by tapping Twitter twice. I wish it were easier to do though. At times the input took too long or it just never registered, so I ended up just mashing the Twitter button until something happened. Blocking with your shield will protect you from most attacks and projectiles, but you can also parry by shielding right as you would have taken damage, later letting you counterattack the enemy while they're stunned. Not every attack can be blocked, however. Some enemies have especially strong attacks that are denoted by these red, wispy circles emanating from them. If you attempt to block, you will take full damage regardless of your timing, so you're best off getting out of the way. When the circle is yellow, it means that it's a big attack, but it has to be blocked just right, otherwise you will be stunned for a moment, leaving you open to follow-up attacks unless you manage to roll out in time. This system makes it very easy for the player to know that you need to be prepared for anything coming your way at any time, so you need to focus on enemy movements as much as your own attacks. Then when it comes to attacking, there's 2 main options: a light attack with R1 and a heavy attack with R2 that you can string together. Similar to another game that I am apparently not good enough to play. You really are just as bad as Fee sometimes, you know? Dude, I am in charge of writing your lines. You are not foreshadowing shit from me. You can swing your initial weapon, the Leviathan Axe, with R1 a few times, and then do a finisher with R2 for some solid damage. Or you can throw it at enemies like a boomerang that you need to remember to call back. Please remember to call it back. Call it back every time. But when you forget to, and you will, I sure did, you can fight unarmed. Below each enemy's health bar is another bar that fills up as you deal damage. Once it's full, enemies are staggered, and you can press R3 to do a finisher that will kill them outright, or eat up a large chunk of their health. So despite punching not doing as much raw damage as your axe, it does far higher stagger damage, making it a much more efficient way of dealing with lesser enemies. Not so much against bosses though. Those you should still use your axe. The stagger damage does not outweigh the DPS against them for the most part. Alright, fine, it's not actually called stagger, but I try to translate mechanics into ones from games that I actually understand, so that it's easier for me to explain them to you. The last form of attack then has Kratos accept the truth by pressing L3 and R3 and activating his limit break, semi-priming, punching like crazy, and healing a little bit. Come on, you really thought I was going to let that one go? There's two more integral mechanics to combat. Firstly, Atreus. Even though he's AI-based, you can use the square button to make him do two things. Shoot arrows when pressed that can stun enemies, which are necessary to fight revenants, aka the second worst enemy in the game. I hate them. Or hold it down to summon some spirit animals that have different effects. You like summons, don't you, Fish? I hate you, actually. The second major mechanic you find shortly after leaving the house are runic attacks. These are equipable combat skills, if you will, and you can have two of them on at any point. One light runic attack and one heavy. These are recharged over time like arts in Xenoblade 1 and either deal more damage or have AoEs, making them a key factor to consider when planning your approach. And like runic attacks, you have relics, pieces of equipment that come with predetermined effects similar to the ones in Final Fantasy VI, like a light heal or defiant defense, recharged over time but also affected by your runic stat. To this day, I still wonder why I gave my base Nino Defiant Defense during the Book 1 Days of Heroes. Even though this isn't an RPG, regardless of how much I wish it was, there are some RPG elements. There's stats that are mostly self-explanatory, which you can increase with items you find in the world, or with equipment you can craft with Brock or Sindri. And you always get a few options when you check in with them, along with being able to add specific amounts of accessories on your equipment that give you passive effects. Of course, I go with the attack-focused equipment because who even needs defense? After every fight you get experience points, but these aren't for traditional level ups, instead they're for the game's skill tree. The skill tree works like every other skill tree in every other game. You can increase the amount of things you can do. I don't know how I can elaborate on what a skill tree is. It's a skill tree. You're a glass fish from Venice. Oh, nothing. The time spent in Leoselfamer also shows off one aspect of the game that I wasn't expecting and actually quite enjoyed. The puzzles. They're by no means complex, of course, this isn't Professor Layton, but they're more environmental puzzles that require you pay attention to your surroundings and explore as much as you can. Oh, sure. Here you go. Throwing the axe on certain objects will freeze them so long as it's there, meaning you can use it to stop gears from turning or keep things in place, for example. You can also throw it at these poison sticks to be able to walk past them without taking damage. Pressing triangle brings it back to you, and any object that was frozen by it will carry on doing whatever it was doing. There's these blue lights around the world that Atreus can shoot with a certain kind of arrow to make light bridges, and the shock arrows, or anything with electricity later on, can blow up these red crystals. You need to keep an eye out for anything that looks like it can be interacted with, because it probably leads to something related to story progression, or just something you want. Or just kill the birds. If you hit them with an arrow or with the axe, they literally explode. Exist. Reaching that peak in Midgard I mentioned way too many pages ago, we meet Mimir, a tree man talking to two unknown people. And what does Kratos do? He chops off Mimir's head and carries it with him for the rest of the game, making him one of the best characters, actually. Mimir mentions the travel room for Jotunheimer is in Tyr's vault, but to access it, we need a piece of the giant Femor's chisel. But we can't ask him for it because he's, well, dead. Or at least I think he's dead. So off we go to steal a chunk of it in what is an incredible segment made even better by every line of character interaction. The back and forth between the characters so far never skipped a beat, and when Mimir is added to the mix is when the already great conversations become even better. Be they story related, or when you get on the boat, or just being idle.
Was she in the light?
Who?
You know.
Oh, she was not there.
These conversations tell you so much more about the characters and what makes them than arguably the story itself. And the moments of levity, the jokes, or times when characters talk about silly scenarios are few and far between, but leave a lasting impact. I guess? And along with the dialogue, the body language and the characters' movements do such a clear and straightforward job of telling you what the characters are thinking. Like my favorite example, the way Kratos acts around Atreus. At times he tries to comfort him, but it seems like he can't bring himself to. It's such a subtle bit of storytelling that then seamlessly leads into the actual theme of the game. What it means to be a parent. After getting a piece of the chisel, we're stopped by Magni and Modi Hemsworth, who look nothing like their father, frankly, in a 2v1 and a half, I guess. And it's not easy. Again, thank the devs for all the checkpoints. I probably would have given up here and changed the difficulty, but I didn't do it because I'm an adult. Now with the chisel, that honestly is more fun to use incorrectly because of the think sound it makes, it's very funny to me. You can open the way to Tyr's vault, but this guy shows up and Atreus tries to use his limit break but almost dies, and this is where the theme of being a parent begins taking shape. But it also starts showing the game's secondary theme of accepting your past. There was one topic in every conversation that Kratos never allowed to be brought up. The fact that he and Atreus are gods. He never told Atreus that they are gods, supposedly in order to protect him from what that means, according to him. And Freya just loves bringing that up every time they meet.
Are you really going to lecture me about that?
So in order to cure Atreus, Kratos needs the heart of a FromSoft fan. Yeah, that's what I said. And to get it, Kratos must go to hell and back. Literally. The gatekeeper is in hell, but you can't attack the enemies there with your axe or your fists, so you need a different weapon. One that should be familiar to fans of the series, aka not me. The best weapon type in Monster Hunter, dual blades. That fact is not up for debate. They don't do as much damage as the axe or as much stagger damage as punching, but they're great for crowd control and they have, range. So I used them more than I had any right to. Because they're magically infused with fire, we now stand a chance against Ganglode, and Hell is the most stunning, visually, of all the other realms. The muted green lightning, the decrepit structures, the wind carving everything in its path, the haze, and at the end a pretty challenging, if somewhat difficult to understand, boss. It's incredible because it reiterates the idea that being a parent should mean you're willing to go to actual hell and back, whether it be a personal one or with just one L for your child. This is by far the best segment of the game, from its newly expanded combat to the story letting the characters show their true colors. And then it all goes out the window when Atreus decides to become a little shit with a god complex.
But we're gods. We can do whatever we want.
I mean, I get it. If I was told I was a god, I would probably react the same. I am in charge, me! And when life gives you lemons, you make life take them back! I don't want your goddamn lemons! What am I supposed to do with this? No comment. Push him off, push him off, push him off the elevator, let him fall. Okay. It's short-lived though, thankfully. And going back into Tyr's vault, we now start the Tyr Ring saga. That is a joke nobody's gonna get. There's some fan service, some toxic masculinity, normal stuff. But it's the first one-on-one instance of Kratos actually showing affection towards his son. All this time, he's been very cold, stern, distant.
What are we hunting?
You are hunting deer.
Which way?
In the direction of deer.
And only when Kratos faced the possibility of losing Atreus did he decide to open up a bit. And once more we climb up the mountain where we met Mimir to open the way to Jotunheimer until, again, we're not. Baldur shows up because of course he does, and we ride an airship in hell. That is an oversimplification, but it isn't any less accurate. I didn't really enjoy this segment. Going back and forth, making sure the fires stay lit, it felt like padding. You get a look into Kratos' past, which I'm sure fans of the series enjoyed, even though it went over my head. And now it's time to flip Tyr's temple. No, that's not a joke. Yeah, and you should have given me the power outright. For the rune to actually work, we need Mimir's other eye, which is inside the demonetization creature. As if this video will ever be monetized. No, but for real, the other eye is inside your I'll get back to you on that one. Because Odin put it there, so you need to choose your words carefully. Row into his mouth to find it. There is no combat inside because it's a creature's stomach. You just row forward, getting some items along the way, and when you're spit out after getting the eye, it's final boss time. No, really, it's time for the final boss. Trust me, it caught me off guard as well. And the final boss is not Freya, it's Baldur. Which, okay, let's talk about him. I don't like Baldur. Baldur looks like he put $5,000 into crypto and lost it all, but still thinks he's gonna get it back. He looks like that one guy who sits in the back of your college history class who thinks he's the reincarnation of a Guevana. He looks like he goes to Comic-Con to try to sell his NFTs to people who are working at the booths or wearing cat ears. He got all those tattoos hoping, praying people would ask about them, only so he could say, "It's personal, I don't have to tell you." He looks like half his wardrobe is flannel shirts. Calling myself out a little bit there. His Twitter bio, says he's 10 years vegan, but he definitely eats McRibs hiding in his room. God, I missed the McRib. Yes, he halts your progression, but he's never threatening. He isn't a menace. He isn't really an enemy. He's barely an antagonist, but he's the final boss. And that's my problem with Baldur. He's shown to be powerful, he's shown to be strong, he has nothing, absolutely nothing to lose, but he doesn't have villainous intent. He isn't out for Kratos or his cause. He's not trying to stop you from achieving your goal, he's just there, getting in the way, wishing he could feel pain, wishing he could die. Which Kratos happily obliged. Feel free to call me out on any of this, by the way. There is a very real chance that I just missed something, and that might change my perspective on him in the future. As for the actual fight, I mean, it's fine. Again, the things Freya does in the background, like trying to kill you by using Thamur, is much more interesting than what's actually happening. No, really, Freya would have been a much better final boss. Not only is she more relevant to the plot, she is a direct parallel to Kratos in what it means to be a parent. They both want to protect their children at all costs, but have vastly different ways of going about it. Kratos withholds information from Atreus, which he believes is a curse, leading to Atreus almost dying because of it.
That is the curse.
Freya tries to protect Baldur by making sure he would never be hurt or killed, something that to him became a curse. It became torture. He had nothing to lose because he physically can't lose.
You still need to pay for the lifetime that you stole from me.
I have paid.
Look, I'm not pretending to know the nuances of the story or the psychological profiles of the characters. This is just what I got from it. Having Freya be the last hurdle to overcome in your quest would have been a much more impactful, much more personal encounter, directly contrasting Kratos. If Baldur was phase 1 of the fight and then Freya was phase 2, that would have been so much better, and I vehemently stand by that. Baldur should not have been the final boss. But with him finally sleeping, the game is technically over. We can finally go up to Jotunheimer and release Phase Ashes at the highest peak. That was the whole point of the game. Did you forget? And this segment is honestly perfect. It's incredible, visually, emotionally. It really feels like everything that happened has been leading up to this, unlike every other game that starts you fighting ants in a cave and ends with you killing God in space. Progression felt straightforward, it felt natural. The ending is subtle, it isn't overwhelming. It's just climbing the stairs, looking at the dead giants, and seeing some of their lore before officially finishing your quest, capping it all off with the reveal that Atreus has the second best Disney Plus show.
Loki?
However, the game isn't over yet, though the main story is. The world is still open to you, meaning you can go around and do some side quests you may have willingly forgotten to do, of which there are quite a few. Most of them are straightforward, thankfully, not like Final Fantasy XVI where they're somewhat intrusive. I will die on this hill. That's the only thing I don't like about Final Fantasy XVI. And Xenoblade 3. You can also go to Moosepell for some gauntlet-styled combat challenges, or your capture card can unexist some of the footage from Nifl. It's all there for you to go and explore. Well, it has been all along, but you know what I mean. But of course, the big side content that gets the most attention, and rightfully so, is the Valkyrie fights. These are secret/super bosses that are completely optional and completely difficult, but they're fun enough to fight. And after you do all that, if you decide to do all that, well, that's God of War. Is what I would have said, but there's another bit of cutscenes if you go back to the house foreshadowing Ragnarok. The event, not anything else. It is a very good thing that I managed to jump off my chair and restart the recording in time, let's put it that way. Now, for real, that is God of War. And it's great. I will admit, this game really isn't my thing. I'm not the most dexterous person when it comes to games that aren't chess with anime swords and dragons, but I still greatly enjoyed it. I can now definitely see why this game gets the hype that it does, and at the very least, I can say I'm going to be here for the next one, whenever that may be. Right, so I guess my first question would be... What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm asking you a question. You said this is how it worked. But I... What? I finished the game. Boy.
Eso me hace acceso. No me dio este